Hi, Ryan here. Welcome to Novelists Inc., NINC, the channel where we talk about the craft and business of writing professionally. Whether an author is at the beginning of their career or a veteran with sizable backlist, one thing remains constant for us all: the need to hone our craft. Today, author Aliza Mann interviews novelist and teacher Patricia A. Jackson about the theory and principles in John Truby's groundbreaking book on craft, The Anatomy of Story. In this conversation, the authors explore how Truby's framework can help all of us create better novels. Larry Wilson, who co-wrote films like Beetlejuice and The Addams Family, calls Truby's theory an indispensable guide to writing. So, let's dive in. While Novelists Inc., NINC, strives to provide accurate and helpful information, NINC does not assume any liability for or endorse any opinions, advice, instructions, products, errors, or omissions in the following video. Viewers are solely responsible for how they interpret and apply any NINC content.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Aliza Mann, and today we'll be discussing The Anatomy of Story with John Truby. And Patricia Jackson is going to break it down for us. Hey, Patricia.
Hey, Eliza, what's up, girl?
And nothing too much. Chilling, chilling, chilling. I'm glad you could come today. I'm
Thank you
so
for having
excited.
me.
Yes, I'm so excited to get started. So in the sea of like craft books, right? And I know you introduced me to John Truby. How did you find John Truby? Like, what stood out for you initially to make you select this novel or craft?
Well, I have to say I hate tradecraft books because they always tell you this is the way to do it. Like everyone's talking about Stephen King's book, and I'm like, yeah, that wasn't for me.
Yeah.
But I ran across this book. I was hanging out in a Discord called Strong Women, Strange Worlds. Shout out to Terry Bruce and the crew. And I just saw this book, and I'm always curious. I do dislike these kinds of books, but it's just because of how they're written. So I went and
Mhm.
I looked this one up, and yeah, there was foreboding and
Mhm.
then curiosity at the same time. So that's how it all went down.
Fantastic. I remember the excitement. You were like, you got to read this, you got to read this. And I was like, I don't know, because I kind of feel like you a little bit. Like, there are so many craft books, and then there are always like these diamonds that kind of, stand out. But I tell you, one of the things that was kind of intimidating, you know me, I'm a pantser, right? And it does speak a lot about, plotting and making decisions about your characters. So while a lot of us do outline, not me, the focus here was on designing the character first, and that kind of stood out for me. How
Mhm.
does that shift the writing process from your perspective?
It makes you become the character. A lot of writers need to figure out why you write books. And for me, it was escapism. I wanted someone to land the Millennium Falcon at my front door, and I wanted to be Han Solo. And I wanted to travel the galaxy. So by designing a character that is very three-dimensional,
Mhm.
you create a story around them that can be just as three-dimensional. And if you are deliberate about that and use Truby's system to really get at the heart of what you're trying to do, your story will tell itself. And you just become an out-of-body experience observer to write it down.
Yeah, for sure. And I've heard people call it like getting into the zone, and you're kind of just a transcriptionist, which is always
Yes.
great,
Yes.
right? Yeah,
Yes.
fantastic. So
Yes.
the other intimidating thing, and I can tell you this because we're buddies, and you understand how
Please.
my you know how my mind works, right? It was like something like a 22 step detailed like structure for this book. Again, I was super intimidated, but I feel like it kind of creates momentum, right? How will you tell everyone kind of how that framework naturally increases momentum in the story?
Um, As a pantser, it was extremely daunting. It was extremely daunting. It was like you were putting weights on the inner child as they're trying to tell the story, but it's not weights, it's resistant bands. And it's just making the inner eight roll stronger as they go forward to tell this story. And it does sometimes slow the momentum because it asks the inner 8 year old or the creative spark to fill in the blanks as we go along. Why are we going on this journey? Why is this character acting the way they are acting? And in doing so, you create the energy of conflict. You
Mhm.
know, many writers talk about the muddle in the middle. I was just talking to a writer. She goes, I have the beginning and I have the end. It's just the middle. And I'm like, you have not done your homework. But this was an
Uh-oh.
emerging writer who, that if I handed Truby to her, would probably lose her mind and never write again. I
Yeah.
just recently gave a writer's course where I introduced Truby, and I could tell it was just at a level they were not ready for. And a lot
Mhm.
of writers need to be honest with themselves. Where are you in the course of your career or your hobby? Are you ready for something like Truby?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like we already mentioned, like the two things is already daunting, right? But and it's just craft is such hard work. You kind of have to like throw yourself into it. I do know when I first started, I was kind of writing plot driven work. I was writing like the plot was everything, the tropes were everything, especially for me as like a romance writer. It's like, okay, I got one bed, I got da da da, I got da da da. But I did like after reading this, I could see how I could make that shift to character fiction. Like, I feel like it did have an emotional payoff for my characters in the end of my stories. Will you talk a little about that? Like, how does this framework, like, deepen that emotional payoff?
It's one of the reasons why I can't seem to find an author or a book series that I love today because
Mhm.
people have forgotten how to make characters likable, lovable, and become
Mhm.
that blanket that you want
Yeah.
to be with. I mean, you can see that in Marvel.
Yeah.
Marvel has moved away from the hero with a thousand faces, the Greek tragedies. Joseph Campbell is truly the mythologist for a reason. That's why Steven Spielberg is so successful, why George Lucas is so successful, why Star Wars is legendary. And when
Hmm.
Marvel moved away from that,
Hmm.
look at what
Yeah.
happened. Look at what happened. So when you create characters, not even just stories, characters that your reader can put that book down and that character lives in their head rent free, you
Hmm.
have successfully done what you were supposed to do. You gave them the pilot and the means to move away from their life or move away from whatever is troubling or ailing them, the reason that they wanted to escape in the first place. And the stories are important. The
Hmm.
stories are important. But if you are true to the character, you will have created the story. But it's
Hmm.
secondary to the person that you created to be the motor of that story, if that makes sense.
It really does. I think that's kind of the thing. Like we have the plots, and somebody said there's only like seven plots in the world, someone from back in the day, but it's the characters, right, that give us an opportunity to take that plot and make it something special. So, on the vein of characters, this book, there is specifically an emphasis on character weakness and need as the foundation. Like, how can authors effectively dig deeper to uncover a protagonist's true need, and not merely surface flaws?
That's tough
Yeah.
because whether writers want to admit it or not, when you
Mhm.
write, you're writing to heal something within yourself. Every character you create, no matter how weirdly different they seem to you, is a
Mhm.
splinter of you, and you are dealing with some kind of healing. So you need to get to the heart of what is it that is wrong? What
Mhm.
are you trying to fix?
Yeah.
What are you giving this character who is like you or is you? What are you giving them in order to be able to fix themselves and thereby heal you by the time that you finish the story? And a lot of writers don't like to do that because it
It's
means unsettling darkness within you, unseating your confidence for a moment to become vulnerable. But that's where the best stories lie, when we are vulnerable and out of our comfort zone.
And I think to dive deep in there into that character is medicine, right? Because you get an
Yes.
opportunity to
Yes.
fix what ails you. And, of course, we're never writing about ourselves, right?
But it's not just because we're going down the yellow brick road because it's the right thing to do. Why
Right.
are you going down the yellow brick road?
hmm
For Dorothy, it's because I'm insecure about myself. I don't
hmm
have control of my life. And she's going to get all of these things, you hope, by the end of the yellow brick road. And she may not. That's a story in and of itself when characters
hmm
don't necessarily achieve all of their desires or any part of their desires in some cases.
And that's the sequel, friend.
Yes, absolutely.
So when we were just getting started, we were talking about that sagging middle. I think one of the big messages is if you fully dive into the character, if what their end goals are, what's going to take them along on that journey, right? Um, how does identifying that character's desires kind of prevent that sagging middle?
Well, it's not even just identifying those desires, it's
Mm-hmm.
identifying how those desires put that character in conflict with everybody else in the story.
Right.
That's where the story is generated. So even before you get to your protagonist, how is your protagonist in conflict with their allies?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at, I'm a Star Wars girly. So
Yeah.
if you look at Star Wars, how is Luke Skywalker in conflict with Princess Leia? How is he in conflict with Han Solo? How is he in conflict with Obi-Wan Kenobi? And you start to generate all of this conflict in the story before
Mm-hmm.
Luke Skywalker ever gets to Darth Vader or the
Right.
Empire. And
Mm-hmm.
I think some writers don't think of it that way. Writers or characters become a means to an end, and that's why
Mm-hmm.
they're flat. That's why they're boring. You know, Characters cannot just exist because you need someone to break the protagonist's heart.
Right.
All right. Why is that character breaking the protagonist's heart?
Exactly.
What's going to happen as a result of that? And that's not your main story. That's just one layer of the story. And that's how you can thicken the plot going
hmm
forward. That's where I get myself in trouble. My analogy is it's like a game. And you have some games where people can finish the game in 8 hours. Me, it's going to take 36 because I'm not just doing the main quest. I'm doing all the side quests as well,
Yeah.
because I want to thicken and layer the story. But again, that's how I get myself in trouble. And, my agent says 110,000 words and I give her 150. And she's like, Patricia, and I'm like, but it's the story. That's the story, says the 8-year-old. And then you have to go back and you have to take some of that out. But I'd rather have too much than not enough at all.
I think that's it, right? Like I would rather be able to go on and on about my characters and what they're doing and keep it interesting, right? And be able to say, okay, so this is not as interesting as that, as opposed to saying, this is boring, let me cut that, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
yeah, I like that. The side quest,
Side
right?
quests. I get myself in trouble all the time. But in the side quest, particularly for pantsers,
Mm-hmm.
that's where we discover things about our characters because
Right.
sometimes Truby doesn't work for the pantser in that
Mm-hmm.
we don't know why the character is doing what they're doing. But by
Mm-hmm.
going along on the quest and putting challenges in front of them and conflicts, we discover it. And then
Mm-hmm.
we can layer that back in better in the rewrite.
Yeah, for
But it's through
sure,
the
for
side
sure.
quests. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I do. And we were just talking about how kind of like, everybody's the antagonist, right? So everybody has yeah, right? So everybody is an obstacle, right? Um, I think one of the big things is to make sure that you're baking that in to create morally compelling protagonists. And, how are you using those principles to do this, right?
Yes, and that's really, really important. If it's really true love when she
Yeah.
meets the prince, well, then why'd I go this far?
Right.
I don't want her just to get it. I want her to struggle with him, not just his
Hmm.
mother or the king. I want her to suffer with him because he's not kind to animals or something. You
Right.
know, something. It when you see the Holy Grail, you should not just be able to walk up to it and pick it up and take it home.
Yeah, yeah. I think like some of our favorite stories, like one of my favorites is oh God, the ogre in Disney. Oh, I can't think
Correct?
of the name. Yes, Shrek, right? She saw her hero and she like, what is this? What is this? You know? And there's a whole other reason for people who haven't ever seen Shrek. I won't go into that, but it was like one of those things where we're like, "Oh my God, this is not the hero she imagined to be." And then they had to continue on with getting to know each other and understanding. I love that.
And me with the stranger in Star Wars Acolyte, which the Star Wars fans just
Yeah.
hated, you know, which just upsets me so much because what, your white savior didn't come through for you?
Mhm.
Whatever, you know, but he's so, people say he's so morally great. No, he isn't. My man's telling the truth.
He was clear on that.
Finally, yes,
Yes.
finally tell him the truth. I want to hear what he has to say, you
Hmm.
know, and he's just so so wonderful. Manny Jacinto is like the world.
Yeah, Manny Jacinto, the whole character of the stranger, I watched it like 10 times, because it was so clear um their opposition and their ultimate need to be together. It was so like
Yes, yes.
lovely and
And for the
yummy.
world, I was hired by Disney to write the middle
Hmm.
grade version of The Acolyte. I don't think it will ever see daylight because of all the backlash on the show, which just makes
Yeah.
me sad because that was such a cool process. Because it was the
Yeah.
first time someone gave me characters and said, go write a story. So these
Hmm.
weren't my imaginary friends. These were someone else's imaginary friends coming to my playground,
Right.
and they're all talking except the stranger. And someone said to me, well, it's too bad you won't be able to tell his perspective. And my inner child said, hold my beer. And when I gave that to the character, a chapter to talk about how he felt about things and OSHA, you know,
Hmm.
oh, heck yeah, that character said, "Brrr, I have tea and I have Kool-Aid. Come,
He
internet
said
old.
I
We have
have
much to discuss. Yeah,
he said I have things to say. I got something
absolutely.
to say. You
Let me
just
get my
had to
recorder
ask
out.
me. So that was an ensemble cast, right? So you had like defined roles, and we'll stick with the acolyte. We had defined roles, stormtroopers. We had the empire. Like everyone was already there, and bringing all of that in. I think you had an opportunity to kind of strengthen that character web. Let's talk a little bit about the character web, right? In this case, it was pre-existing, right? And when we're creating the world, it's not pre-existing. How do we manage that and make sure that it, like the acolyte, continues to strengthen that ensemble cast?
There's a great book by a gal named Julie Cameron called The Artist's Way.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, she almost drank herself to death because she thought she
Oh.
had to be drunk in order to be creative. And one of the things I learned in that book is creativity is a fire sitting right in front of us, but yet we take these journeys away from the fire in order to find creativity. And we start searching for these ideas or notions of characters from
Mhm.
30,000 feet away when they're right here in front of us. When you look at the characters of the Acolyte, there's nothing
Mhm.
that's 30,000 feet away. It's right here. Fear, failure, duty,
Mhm.
protecting children, wanting to be good at what you do, wanting to be acknowledged and accepted for what you do. Propaganda, when someone lies to us, these are stories that you can find over and over again, wearing many different costumes, many different capes. So it wasn't a far stretch. These are basic human intrinsic quirks. I won't call them flaws. I'm just going
Yeah.
to call them quirks, you
Mhm.
know, that generate conflict between us and create great stories, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. Like I love that notion. And sometimes we romanticize the hero, especially in like you write fantasy, but I write romance. We're romanticizing the hero. If people are too good or too bad, it's unrelatable,
And we
right?
make that, and we make them flat. We make them
Yeah.
flat and unbelievable. Yeah.
hmm Yeah, for sure. For sure. So what mistakes can authors make, right? While they're building this framework, and Truby says do it right at the beginning, right? So right at the beginning, you're building this and you haven't met sometimes the character, right? In your mind, right? What mistakes can we make as we're trying to build this interconnected framework and make our characters leap off the page?
I teach creative writing, so I will just go with the very first mistake that most emerging writers make, and that's
hmm
not in having a clear and definite antagonist with a motivation of their own.
hmm
I was just in a class where one of the students had a character. She didn't know why the antagonist was going against the protagonist. That's a
hmm
problem. He
Yeah.
was just there to create the conflict for the protagonist.
hmm
That's a problem because that clearly means you haven't done your research on the
Right.
antagonist, and just kind of adjacent to that is people who say that the antagonist is this large, faceless faction. It's the Empire, it's Cerberus, it's Spectre.
hmm
Okay, well, what is that and why do I have to be afraid? They have to give a face to the antagonist, they have to give a face to the faction in order to make the reader afraid for the protagonist or to give the protagonist a place to start when the
hmm
real conflict of the story comes up. So that's a major major issue, and then people wonder why they can't get to the ending of the story. Well,
hmm
your obstacle is what's tripping you up because it's not quite what it should be.
Especially like, and I won't say just fantasy because we're all
Nope.
building worlds,
Hmm.
right? We're all trying to, make sure that our characters make sense in the world that we've created. And if the fear or the threat is not realistic, you end up like, why am I even reading this book,
why
right?
am i why am I bothering?
Yeah,
Absolutely, yes.
totally, totally understand
And
that.
I love morally gray antagonists.
I mean, why
I love,
not include them? I love it too.
yep. Why now I understand why you're doing it. I don't agree with why you're doing it,
Right.
but I get why you're doing it. Yeah.
I think that we call it the touch her and die trope, right? Where, it is not good for you, sir, to or ma'am, to go and slay an entire village because your love interest feelings were hurt. But boy, is it great when we
He did that for her. Oh, okay. Okay.
right in my heart. Yes, exactly that. So, we're talking about fantasy a lot here because we're both like, I'm big MCU, you are Star Wars, I'm Star Trek, you're Star Trek, right? How can authors use symbols and motifs effectively without over explaining them in these worlds that they've built?
This is where we sort of sidestep into screenwriting for a little bit, and they
hmm
talk about mise en scene.
Yes.
And part of mise en scene, and you can look that kind of thing up. But one of the things I'm fascinated about with the screenwriting side of it is props.
hmm
And writers don't think about props enough, but think about it. There'd be no Lord of the Rings without the ring.
Right. Right.
And while the ring itself has a story and is a character, it is
hmm
the stories that develop because of the ring that get us and keep us invested into the story itself. So
hmm
it is really important that writers understand what their symbols and their props are and how those things come up and why they are important. So in my
hmm
my fantasy that I just finished, there is an Ethniel blade, there is a sword, and there are all these connotations that come from how you wear the sword, a person who carries the sword, and what the sword can do. The sword itself is not magical.
Right.
It's just made of a certain composition, allows the user to do something special if they have to hurt someone.
hmm
And that has to play throughout the story. So writers need to give real importance to their symbols. And again, we pantsers,
Yes.
Sometimes we're not ready, and we need the journey in order for us to understand truly what the symbol is, what the
Hmm.
symbol means, and what the symbol does. But as far as motifs, motifs are just reoccurring story features, and we know this. When we watch the cop movie, we know we're going to have the drunk cop who is divorced. We're going to have the hot-headed rookie who's going to save the world. We have the retired cop who doesn't want to do anything because he doesn't want to die before he reaches his retirement. So we understand these motifs. We call them tropes in the
Hmm.
writing world. Um, and you have to understand that while you may be writing for yourself, which is what I do, you
Hmm.
do have an audience who's going to be looking for these particular tropes or something a little different and something a little new.
Hmm.
Readers, I think, sometimes can be a little unrealistic in expectations. I had a lady chew me down really good because I didn't have an autistic character in my story.
Hmm.
Ma'am, I've had autistic students, but I don't understand autism myself. And even if I were to do the research, I'm not sure I could do justice to an autistic character. So I'm damned if I do, and I'm damned if I don't.
Right.
But I'm not comfortable with doing that, and unfortunately, you have a host of people who think they can write all about Black people when they don't look like a Black person
Hmm.
and just take
Hmm.
liberties with things and make no apologies for it, which greatly bothers me. I'm going to have responsibility and I'm going to be careful
Yeah.
with the people that I have chosen to tell stories about.
Yeah, I do think it's important, right? Like, differently able people and, a whole host of minority groups. If we haven't given its due, I don't know that we should dive in, right? And that's not to say you can't, but, it
And do it
does.
well.
Right. It means you need to create these compelling characters. And I mean, you know what? John Truby is a good way to do that, right?
Yes. If you're really going to do your research, and some people, I'm finding more and more people not
Mhm.
wanting to do the work. You have these new systems called free write where they're keyboard systems that keep you from going to the internet and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Y'all need to learn some discipline because I don't think you should just walk into the rabbit hole. I think you should fall down it and hit every side on the way down because it might be teaching you something. You have to discipline yourself and be like, I'm gonna play on the internet for an hour and then I'm
Mhm.
gonna I'm gonna collect things and then I'm gonna come back.
Right.
Writing isn't just the physical act of sitting down and pounding on the keyboard or writing in your journal. Writing is
Mhm.
thinking about it. It's daydreaming to a song on the car on the way to the grocery store. It's this research that you're doing as you're seeing things. And
Mhm.
I think that's really valuable. But
I
I'm a
would have to agree
pantser.
with that.
Of course, I would say that.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that rabbit hole thing, and I think that is a danger, but sometimes it's necessary. Like, we're
It
not
is
going to put
necessary.
every single thing on the page, right? Like, that might get a little boring, but it is important to know it, right? Knowing
Yes.
the rules, right?
Yes.
Fantastic. So, yes, we're both pantsers. How can we weave this massive framework into our day-to-day lives, writing lives? What do you think is the key there?
It's a word that pantsers don't like.
Mhm.
Discipline.
Oof.
The inner 8-year-old, every time you write something, you get better. I've always said to my students, if you want to own your craft, you have to hone your craft.
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I think it's just a matter of sitting down with this book, with a novel that you are writing, and just getting the work done, like almost like a graduate level class. It sucks,
Mhm.
it hurts, it's mentally painful, but you do it because you learn something and you walk away with it. So that the next time you pick up a novel to write, you don't have to go back to the book. You
Right.
remember certain things, or you know where to go back to research
Mhm.
if you have questions. So you're already a better writer
Yeah,
for the
for
writer
sure.
who's going to hone and continue their craft. I know a lot of people write a book and then they stop for whatever reason. I have a former superintendent. It was his dream to write a book. He did it. He got it published, and he's not writing anymore. Me, I'm done with the book, send it off to the agent. I'm already on the next book.
Hmm.
But I'm taking what I learned every step of the way. And with Truby, from having read that, as I'm playing with this book, and if I get stuck, I go back to Truby. What am I missing? What did I forget? Oh, I forgot that. Okay. And then I go back to the quest and continue the quest or the side quest, whatever it might be. So it's not something that you have to do every time because you will know it. And your inner eight year
Right.
old will take, I like that tool. I'm going to keep this tool. I like this tool. I'm going to keep this tool. Not
Mhm.
sure if I like that tool. I'm going to leave that sitting right there and keep going. And you
Mhm.
just get better through the act.
Yeah.
As with anything, when you practice your craft, you get better at it.
True, true, true. So it just kind of goes in your toolbox. You're like,
It does.
this is the part that I love. I'm going to pluck it. And for me, I feel that I was like, I can't apply all of this, but I definitely put that character webbing piece into play. I just think it's so helpful. So what are some practical ways writers can analyze? I am terrible at self-editing as well. It sounds like I'm a horrible writer because I'm terrible at everything. But
No way, man. I don't believe
how
it. Don't believe her. She's not telling the truth.
I make up stories. So how can writers analyze their manuscript once they're all done? How can they apply this framework during revisions? Because, we talked about upfront, but how does it affect at the back end?
Um, as you are going through and the story is done, you should be able to bring up those master skills of analysis even easier because now you're
Mhm.
not worried about finishing the story. It's
Right.
done. Now you can turn a different kind of eye. So as your
Mhm.
protagonist is interacting with various characters, you can ask yourself, how y'all not getting along?
Right. Right.
What's going on between you two? What is
Mhm.
your moral need? How are you hurting people? Oh, that's how you're. Oh, I like that. And now you have a quiet space because now you can look at it from a
Mhm.
30,000, view, foot view and not worry about it because it's done. Now you can
Mhm.
you can fill in the holes, you can spackle over things, you can go back
Yeah.
and slow down things that you rush through because the story is done. Because that's the hardest part,
Yeah,
finishing
for
the story.
sure.
Yes.
That objective viewpoint once you're done, because I love everything. But we talked about that. Like, you
hmm
made $150,000 story. It needs to be 110. You can use that to like plug and play. Love
Well,
it.
my inner 8 year old likes to repeat herself. She's so sure that the reader missed something, so we have to say it again. No, 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 we're taking that out. She said,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
The inner 8-year-old is a fantastic muse, and thank you for introducing me to that as well. It's just great. So three concepts from Truby, The Anatomy of Story, that can be applied immediately.
First and foremost, what is your protagonist's moral need? And this is no different than what every other teacher of writing will ask. What does your character desire? Okay. But Truby cranks it up a notch. So, number two, what is your character protagonist's psychological need? And that psychological need is hurting other people. And when you say that to a writer, they're like, huh?
Right.
What? So for my protagonist in my fantasy, he's been hurt so many times. He's a foster kid. He's keeping everybody at bay. So
Hmm.
he's not asking the nice cop lady, can I stay at your house? Can I have a place to stay? He's hoping to get laid. All right. He's looking for his needs to be fulfilled. So this is
Right.
how he's hurting people, keeping them away. So
Hmm.
the third thing is take that and apply it to every other character that the protagonist is going to meet, not just the antagonist, because
Right.
this creates so many other stories and that love
Hmm.
that you think is so special and so wonderful and so warm kind of changes when it's really not true love.
Right.
It will become true love. Okay.
Yeah.
But the love interest, she's only with you because she doesn't want to be alone.
Right.
Ooh, ooh,
Uh-oh.
ooh, ow. Okay. And when you realize, but I don't want to be alone either. So I'm okay with I'm gonna stay with her. Well, is that healthy?
Right.
Can you guys make that healthy? And
Hmm.
we're not even talking about the main antagonist who's trying to kill you. All
Right.
right. We're just talking about you and your squeeze not getting along. So that is really, really important to, they call it the four corners of opposition. How are all of these characters in conflict with each other?
Right.
Wash, rinse, and repeat, because that makes
Hmm.
the story.
Hmm. I have to agree. Every time that main character interacts with someone, it needs to have that four corners of opposition.
Absolutely. And then, depending upon the relationship of those two allies, when that conflict comes to a head,
Hmm.
like that really bad blackhead comes to a head, it's going to hurt that much
Hmm.
more. And I say this to my kids too in my class. If it doesn't leave a bruise on you, how is it going to bruise the reader? And that's what you
Right.
want. You want them to throw the book across the room or put that book down and be like, yeah, I'm gonna go to the bathroom right now. I need to go get
Yeah,
a drink because what happened, I'm not okay with. I'm walking
I'm
away.
not okay.
I'm not
That's right.
okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the goal, and then leave our readers
Yes.
completely not okay. So,
Not okay. I'm going to bed now. And they're lying. They're lying. So taking the book
because they're
with
the
them.
exactly,
You
exactly
better
that.
fix what you did. You said that to her. You better go back. And you're going through the pages.
Hmm.
And that's really what you want. That's at the heart of it. And that's not necessarily events. That
Hmm.
is character driven. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Oh my God, this was a great conversation. So,
Yeah, it was.
tell me what's next for you, Patricia A. Jackson, fantasy author
Girl.
extraordinaire.
I am going back to my sci-fi roots because I was a Star Wars girly. I wrote Star Wars for 20 years.
Hmm.
And so now I'm going back to sci-fi. I'm doing a hardcore military sci-fi with
Hmm.
a slash of romance in it. And I am super, super excited about it. So, friend, enemies to lovers, alien hero. Yeah, we're
Catnip.
stoked.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to read that. I really love this interview. I hope folks will pick up Anatomy of Story by John Truby. I know it can be daunting, but I do think it's worth the read. And thank you for breaking it down for us
I
this week.
always say to friends, and I said this to you, at the risk of our friendship, I have a book to recommend. I've done that twice because I'm always afraid that someone's going to get mad. But why'd you tell me about that book? It's
Right?
terrible. And the two friends I've done that with both have loved it. So including
Yes,
you.
I did.
It's a tough book. It asks you to make some serious answer some questions about your story that are difficult. If you're a
Hmm.
writer, you should be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, every birth is hard, right? Isn't that true?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Patricia. And thank you all for joining us today. It was a great interview, and I really hope you got something out of it too. Thanks so much.
Hey, it's me again. If you'd like to explore the work of today's guests, Patricia Jackson, or NINC's own Aliza Mann, or John Truby, we'll put those links in the description below this video. Meanwhile, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, this is Ryan at Novelist Inc., signing off.